Let's see. Now we have you can kite anything to death. Others have sometimes referred to this as melee is too weak, and to be fair, ArenaNet has actually stated that they are still fine-tuning this aspect of the game, as they're not happy with it in its current form. The problem many are seeing is that since every class has the options to use melee or ranged attacks, why would they risk engaging a foe in melee when they can attack safely from a range? On some fights, there isn't a reason, really. For example, the current clip playing is of Tex and myself taking on a champion Etten. Champion units are designed to be fought by no less than 5 players, but even though it takes us a while, we manage to down him through kiting. This particular foe is also an utter beast in melee, and without my defensive skills off cooldown, I'm lucky to survive 3 hits. The reason I do enter melee is that I do a lot more damage when in close. This foe always seems to focus on the player closest to him, and being in melee gives Tex some breathing room. Though once my defensive abilities are all used up, I hightail it out of there and switch back to my ranged weapon. If I hadn't have had so many defensive skills, I wouldn't have bothered meleeing this foe, as the risk would not have been worth the small increase in damage. Also, take note that if this foe had a ranged, charging, snare, or even a cripple attack, this would not have been a simple affair. Also, wide open spaces like this and fighting just one mob at a time are not the norm in Guild Wars 2. Here we are trying the same tactic on a champion spider we found at the bottom of a crypt. This boss not only has a ranged poison attack, but adds to harass us with, and the room is littered with traps that must be avoided. Needless to say, Tex and I were unable to down this monster on our own. So no, you cannot just ranged everything to death, but ArenaNet has stated they want to tune the melee a bit more so the risk is worth the reward. In the end, Tex and I called in 2 other guildies, led them through the trap-infested crypt, and after a hard-fought battle we brought him down. Unlike the Etten, that fight was an interesting one. Which leads me to the next point. Combat is not interesting enough. Now this one, I just don't understand. Most of the people who say to me, the combat looks boring, they turn out to be World of Warcraft players. How on earth is this more boring than World of Warcraft? In open world World of Warcraft, you can kill most foes by spamming 1 or 2 buttons with little to no character movement. Some raid bosses require me to stay in the same spot the entire fight, spamming the same boring rotation over and over, with maybe some odd fire to walk out of. I'm sorry, but at the very worst you can say Guild Wars 2 combat is just as boring as World of Warcraft. Even then I'd say you'd have to either be misinformed, a liar, or have a very different definition of what interesting is than I do. Have a look at the videos we've already put up. The most boring fight is me and Tex kiting that bloody Etten around you just saw. And that was our own fault for engaging a 5-player plus mob with only 2 people. Also, every Wednesday that I go to raid Dragon Soul 10 in World of Warcraft with the Darkspear Brotherhood, I find myself wanting to stay mobile, and even worse, trying to use the dodge mechanic. Guild Wars 2 teaches you to stay mobile and alert, while a lot of the time WoW does just the opposite. I'm sorry, but personally I cannot find any argument to support this concern whatsoever. Please leave me some comments if you think I've missed something here, and I'll elaborate on them. Okay, I went on a bit of a rant there. Sorry about that, but the action-orientated combat in Guild Wars 2 is one of my favourite things about it, and being told that World of Warcraft beats it hands down just bugs the crap out of me. Last we have not being led by the nose. This is an interesting one that caught me completely off guard. Once the tutorial area is over, you're dropped into your race's starting zone and told to go look for people to help. Not far away is an NPC with a spyglass icon over his head who will point out a few locations to get you started. You'll find these scouts dotted around all the zones in Guild Wars 2, but some players are posting on the forums that it's not clear enough which things they should be doing first. Personally, I don't really think it matters all that much, but they seem to be concerned that if they aren't doing things in the right order, they're going to miss out on stuff, or waste time looking for what to do next. Now, I think this waste time wandering around mentality stems from the I've got to grind to level 80 as fast as I can to reach the end game mentality that we went over earlier. I recommend that players that feel this way just take a deep breath, slow down for a moment, and enjoy the game. Wandering around aimlessly is one of the best things to do in Guild Wars 2. There are tons of dynamic events, hidden areas, jumping puzzles, and all other sorts of odds and ends scattered around the place for you to find. And the only way you're going to find them is just by wandering around. The most ironic thing is that if you try to power through the content as fast as you can, you probably will actually end up gaining less experience by the time you finish the zone compared to someone who took the time to wander around and get lost. Enigmus goes over this in detail on his channel, and I'll leave a link to it in the video info section, as I believe it's worth checking out. Also, if the idea of exploring a vast open world full of content doesn't appeal to you, then why are you playing an MMO in the first place? If you really feel you have to be led around, I suppose you could always wait for the wiki to get updated or buy a strategy guide, but I think that would detract from the game's overall enjoyment and experience. That took a lot longer than I expected. Sorry about that. In summary, I don't believe the question we should be asking ourselves is, will Guild Wars 2 fail, but rather, how successful will Guild Wars 2 be? Will it be the game that deals a final crippling blow to the juggernaut World of Warcraft, or will it be a game with its own niche fan base? I'm still convinced that Guild Wars 2 will not in any way fail. Even after going through all of those concerns, some of which I share, you might be asking me, why? Well, it's simple. Because of the amount of fun I've had playing it over the past 2 beta weekends. It's an incomplete product that needs a lot of fine-tuning and work before it's ready for release, and yet it's one of the most enjoyable gaming experiences I've had in years. It's not going to be the game for everyone, but what game is? It's already got a large, dedicated, sometimes almost rabidly dedicated fan base, which can only grow once it's been released. The combat is engaging, the world is vibrant and feels alive and encourages you to explore it, and once you buy the game you don't have to pay a subscription fee, so you can play it at your own pace, rather than feeling obliged to play it non-stop to get value from your dollar. As long as none of the points I've gone over are absolute game breakers to you, just go into Guild Wars 2 and be prepared to play something new and refreshing, and you can't go wrong. The only way I can see anyone being completely disappointed with Guild Wars 2 is if they're actually looking for an MMO that's the same as those that have come before it, i.e. World of Warcraft 2.0. If that's what you're after, don't even bother looking at this MMO. Right, this has been Kaaboose from Dodge This on reasons Guild Wars 2 will or will not fail. As always, please email us at dodgethisbam@yahoo.com.au with video in the subject header with requests for our next video. Also, please leave us some comments on any thoughts, complaints or queries you may have. Alright, we'll see you next time.